Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule has opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, and in this video I'm bringing back the Think Like a Pro series. And this video I'm going to be going over what different words and jargon are in the card game community. Specifically, this is going to be for Legends of Runeterra. So this will help you with if you're coming from, if you didn't come from like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. But you hear people say all these things all the time, like swing, burst pass, fizzle, OTK, proc, ping, face, stuff like that. Like, if you hear all these words that you don't quite understand because you're just getting into card games, but you're around people that have been playing card games for years now and completely different card games, then this video is for you and it'll help you understand what people are saying. So it's not like they're speaking their own language and you're around. But before we get into the video and get into all the different words of jargon, I wanted to remind you guys that 60% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to me. So if you guys could do me a huge favor and click that subscriber button and then click the bell to help out with the YouTube algorithm, that would help me out so much. We're trying to hit 5,000 subs before the end of the year to start 2022 off strong. So that would help me out a lot and I would really, really appreciate it. So this video is broken down into 3 parts. It's not going to be a very long video, but there's 3 different parts. There's going to be combat words that we go over. There's going to be general gameplay words that we go over, and then just general words that we go over together. So that's it for the intro. Let's get into the first set of words, which is the combat keywords. Alright, so to start things off with, we'll go over the combat keywords. So for the combat keywords, we're going to start off with the word swing. So swing just means attack. It means when you have the attack token and you're going to put all of your units into attacking your opponent. Turn your units sideways or put them all sideways. That's a magic term. So people that come from Magic have used that. That just, again, means that you're going to attack with your units, because in Magic, when you attack, you turn your units sideways. So people just say something like, yeah, I'm just going to, turn them all sideways, untap and turn them all sideways. That means that they're just going to immediately attack with everything, or attack with a lot of things. Open attack. Open attack means to attack as soon as your turn happens. So before you do anything, before you develop any units, before you play any other cards, you're just going to immediately attack when it becomes your turn with the attack token. Combat tricks. So, we're in the combat section, so let's talk about the word combat trick. A combat trick is basically any spell or ability that can change how combat works. So, for instance, if you're attacking with the 2/2, your opponent's blocking with the 2/2. If you use a spell like, Troll Chanter, if you use a spell to make your unit bigger so it lives during combat, that's considered a combat trick. If you use any abilities from your units during combat, like you can give a unit -2 power, that's a combat trick. Which leads us right into our last portion for the combat keywords, which is pump spells. So a pump spell is a combat trick. So not all combat tricks are pump spells, but all pump spells are combat tricks. And what a pump spell is, it just means you're making your unit bigger. It just means like you're pumping up the stats on your unit. So if you have a spell that says give your unit +3/+3, right? Like Mark of the Isles is a great example. It's give your unit +2/+2, then it gains ephemeral. That's going to be a pump spell because you are pumping up the stats of your unit during combat to give it either a better trade or to deal more damage. So that's it for the combat keywords. Now we're just going to head into the general keywords. Alright, so for this part we're going to talk about general keywords, and so this just means words about card games in general, not necessarily the gameplay of card games. That'll be in the last portion here. So for general words, I have tech cards, and what tech cards stands for is, some people call them technology. It basically means that you have a very specific card for a very specific matchup. For instance, Stony Suppressor is a great card. It's a 2-mana 1/3 that makes all spells cost 1 more. So that's going to be considered a tech card because you only want it versus decks that play spells. They're usually very polarizing cards, which means they're cards that are good in very specific matchups or metas and really, really bad in other matchups and metas. So, these cards are going to be good into decks like Lee Sin, where they're super, super spell heavy. Cards like Sonic Suppressor is a great tech card because it'll be really, really good. However, against a mid-range deck or a burn deck, Sonic Suppressor is going to be really, really bad because they don't care about spells. They're just going to play their big units and then kill you. So that's what a tech card is. Tutors. A tutor is just something that goes and finds you another card. For instance, in Legends of Runeterra, we have Zapped Brayfen. It's a 4-mana 2/2 that says draw a spell that costs 3 or less. So a lot of people will say tutor. You're going to say, oh, I'm going to play Zap, and it's going to tutor me a spell. Other words are any of the boats in this game, like the Shin boat. Boat is just a reference to any card that goes and finds a champion for you. For instance, we have the Siren for Misfortune, we have Dreadway for Gangplank, we have Draven's Biggest Fan for Draven. These are called boats because a lot of them are, in fact, on a boat, or they are boats. Those are also very good. Those are very good tutors because they immediately go and they search out your champion and they put the champion either on top of your deck or in your hand. So those are really good examples of tutors. Tribal. So tribal is a word that basically just means anything that has the same tag on it, or same unit type. Like Yordles is something that we just got in the most recent expansion. Yordle is a tribal. You say someone's playing tribal Yordles if they're playing a deck that is all Yordles or all Yordle based. Another one we can use is Elnuks. Like you can say he's playing Elnuk Tribal if he's playing an Elnuk deck with a bunch of Elnuks, and the goal is just to play Elnuks, buff Elnuks, stuff like that. Spider Tribal is another one. The last two are going to be Face. So Face is just your enemy's nexus. If there's a saying that's just like, oh, just go face, or face is the place. That basically is just somebody telling you, yeah, just attack their nexus. So if you have, let's say, a Get Excited in your hand, and someone is telling you, yeah, just send it face, that means they're telling you to go ahead and Get Excited your opponent's nexus instead of using it on any of the units to interact with the board or anything like that. And the last general keyword is going to be tilt. So tilt is an extremely common keyword. It comes from poker. It basically means when you're on edge of something happens. So let's say your opponent has exactly one card in their deck that they could draw to deal with your board, and they draw it, and you feel kind of like frustrated, and you're like, oh man, he only had a 3% odds to actually hit this card or something like that, and you feel kind of frustrated, and you don't really like have any other words to put it. You're just really, really down in the moment. That's going to be called tilt. It can make you kind of frustrated and lean backwards or anything like that, and kind of take your mental out of the game. And if it ruins your mental, then that's considered tilt. So that's it for the general keywords. We're going to go into the last section here, which is the longest list of cards, and that's going to be the gameplay keywords and the gameplay jargon words. Alright, and then for the last portion of words here, we're going to go over gameplay keywords. So these are words that have to do with the actual gameplay of the game. So we'll start things off with the word ping. We have an entire deck right now called Ping City, and a lot of people don't really understand why it's called that. A ping is usually just something that deals 1 damage. So for instance, Pokestick is a ping because it deals 1 damage to something and then you draw a card. Make It Rain is a ping because it does 1 damage, even though it does it to 3 different units, it still is only doing 1 damage at a time. So anything that deals 1 damage, or even if it's like multiple times again, like Make It Rain or Static Shock, those are still considered pings. You're just pinging 2 units is all that's happening. Bounce. So bounce is essentially recall. If somebody casts like a Will of Ionia or a Homecoming on one of your units and returns it to your hand, that's a bounce. So let's say they bounced it back to your hand, or when Katarina comes down and attacks, she bounces herself to her to the opponent's hand, back to her owner's hand. So these are really good ways. The 2-mana 2/2 Navori Conspirator, that's the elusive. He comes into play for 2 mana and then he bounces a unit back to your hand because he recalls a unit to your hand. So you just can interchange the word recall and add the word bounce. The next word is going to be proc. So proc just means you've activated something. For instance, the Eye of the Dragon is a really good example. It requires you to use 2 spells, and then if you've used 2 spells, then you get a Dragonling the next turn. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm going to proc Dragonling, or I'm going to stop them from procking Dragonling. That means you're going to try and stop them from activating the Dragonling. You're going to stop them from casting 2 spells in the turn, so that way they get their Dragonling. Another good example is going to be the 1 mana 1/2 from Noxus that says the next unit you play is going to deal, or it's going to deal 1 damage to that unit and then get +1/+1. So the next time they play a unit, they're going to proc the first unit's ability, and the first unit is going to grow and because of that. So proc just means activate an ability. It's usually just on a unit that's already in play. The next word is going to be OTK, and that's just an abbreviation for 1 turn kill. This is for things like Lee Sin or combo decks most of the time. It's whenever somebody takes you from 20 HP to 0 and just, kills you in 1 shot or 1 go. And it can be very, very frustrating to play against, and it typically only happens with the combo decks. So that's what OTK stands for, is 1 turn kill. The next word is going to be fizzle. So fizzle means that a spell or an ability completely cancels out or stops. This can be things like if your opponent is trying to glimpse beyond, if they try to sacrifice their unit to draw 2, well, if you kill that unit that they're targeting, it will fizzle out the spell, meaning that it will cancel the spell completely and they won't get to draw their 2 cards. That's a really, really good example of how the word fizzle can be used. It just means when an ability or a unit is stopped and is no longer going to go off. The next word is going to be like a soft pass or a burst pass in this game. So a soft pass basically just means you are doing an action to pass the turn to your opponent without actually ending the turn. So a hard pass would be an example of hard pass, just means you're clicking the pass button and you're giving your opponent the option to actually end the turn. A soft pass would be something like, oh, I'm going to play a 1/1 unit, even though you have 7 mana. So let's say it's really, really late into the game, and you want to see what your opponent wants to do with their turn. So you're just going to play a little 1/1. So that's a very soft pass because you still have all of your mana. You could still play any big unit with 6 mana or any spell with 6 mana. But because you want to wait to see what your opponent does to see if they maybe, use all of their spells or use all of their mana for something like that, either a big spell or a big unit, then what you're doing is you're soft passing to your opponent. And then burst pass goes right along with that because most of the time you are going to soft pass with a burst spell. So for instance, a rummage is a great example because it's just really, really cheap, 2 mana. You get to draw some cards and then you can click pass. And because you took an action, it won't actually offer your opponent to end the turn because you did take that action. So you get to have priority back to see if you want to cast anything else for the turn. So most burst passes are soft passes, but not all soft passes have to be burst passes because you can soft pass with a unit or something like that, or soft pass with a slow speed spell. And then burst pass just means, it's a quick little pass. So for the next word, it's going to be storming off, and we don't have storm cards in Legends of Runeterra at the moment, but what this means is your opponent is essentially just casting a bunch of spells in a row. This is going to be like Ezreal Karma, old Ezreal Karma anyways, where they would just sit there and then go okay, spell, and then you're dead. We call that storming off. Usually it leads into, it comes from Magic the Gathering, where in Magic they actually have a storm mechanic that says for each spell you've played this turn, usually do an effect like deal 1 damage for each spell you've played this turn. And that's where the word storming off comes from, is because, they're going to play a bunch of cards this turn and then eventually kill us. And that's, we don't have anything quite like that in LOR, but sometimes if your opponent just casts a whole bunch of spells in a row, people will call it storming off. The next word is going to be lock, as in your opponent has put you in a lock, or they're playing a lock deck or something like that, or you're locked out of the game. All this means is that you are basically, your opponent has the game completely under control and you have no chance of really winning or coming back. This is going to be something like, let's say you have 0 units in play and you have 1 card in hand and your opponent has a leveled Senna in play. That means they essentially have you in a lock because you can't play anything. If you play anything, it dies. And then if you don't play anything, they just eventually kill you with this 4/4 attacker. So that's a really good example of a lock. They can TLC used to do this, or the Freljord Shadow Isle control decks could do this a lot, where they basically lock you out of the game by going, okay, I'm going to board wipe all of your units and then remove all of your units to the point to where you have such few cards in your hand that anytime you play any unit, I'm just going to either kill it or be able to block it, and it's going to be insignificant to me. And so they have locked you out of the game, which means they have made it so you cannot win anymore. The next word is going to be burn. This is just a term used for any sort of direct damage. Any type of deck can be a burn deck if it just deals a bunch of damage to your face. This is going to be like Mystic Shot. If a Mystic Shot is going to your face, that's considered burn because it can go face. However, something like Gotcha is not considered burn because Gotcha cannot go face. You remember the word face means nexus. So if it doesn't hit the nexus, then it's not considered burn. If it does hit the nexus, and this can be for abilities too, like the Demolitionist, the 2-mana 2/3, that says deal 1 damage to a unit and then deal 2 damage to your enemy's nexus, that's burn, because it deals direct damage to the enemy nexus. And that's really what burn is all about, is direct damage to the enemy nexus. The last couple words here is going to be curving out. So curving out just means you are playing a bunch of your units on the turn that you are allowed to, meaning you play your 1-drop on turn 1, you play your 2-mana unit on turn 2, you play your 3-mana unit on turn 3, your 4-mana unit on turn 4, stuff like that, where it's like, okay, whatever mana cost these units are, you play them on that turn. That's considered curving out. That means you have a good curve, which means as the mana goes up, as your mana goes up in your units, the mana you have available to you go up, the units that you're playing also go up in usually in stats and expensive costs and stuff like that. So your units are following that same curve of mana, because as you gain mana, you get to play bigger units. The last 3 words here is going to be clock. So a clock means how fast somebody is usually killing you. For instance, if you're at 20 HP, your opponent plays a 2/2, you're going to be on what is a 10-turn clock. That means you have 10 turns until your opponent kills you with this 2/2. It usually comes into effect when your opponent plays much bigger units. So if they have, let's say, 10 power on the board, they're going to say, okay, you have a 2-turn clock on you now, which means you have 2 turns until you're dead. So a clock is just a reference of how long you have until you are dead, or until your opponent kills you, or until you kill your opponent. The last 2 words here are going to be thinning your deck out. So thinning your deck out just means you're going to either draw cards or discard cards from your deck to make it smaller, to give you a higher chance to draw something you want. So this is a good example of this is going to be a Lee Sin deck. And Lee Sin deck, you really need Lee Sin to win. So you can play cards like Deep Meditation that will draw you specifically spells, and then that's going to thin your deck out a little bit to make it a higher chance that you draw Lee Sin, because you're taking spells out of your deck, which means the odds of you now drawing a unit is going to be pretty good, like pretty high, or at least it's going to be higher than it was before you cast the Deep Meditation. Another way are cards that search for themselves or tutor for themselves, like again in the Lee Sin example, you have the card Zenith Blade. If you Daybreak Zenith Blade, then it draws you a Zenith Blade out of your deck. Well, that is thinning your deck out. That means that you have a much lower chance, a 0% chance now to actually draw a Zenith Blade, which means that you're going to now draw a more useful card like a Lee Sin or a different spell. And the very last word we're going to talk about is the word vanilla. And this usually talks about units. So a vanilla unit just means it is a unit that has a stat line and then no abilities. So this is going to be something like I forgot what it's called, but it's like a 2-mana 1/4 Demacia unit. I think his name is like Border Lookout or Vanguard Lookout or something like that. But it has no abilities. It's just a 2-mana 1/4 unit. That unit is going to be vanilla because it has no abilities. Boom Karuki is a 2-mana 1/3, but it has an ability that says whenever I attack, I deal 2 damage directly to the enemy nexus. That card is not vanilla because it has that ability tacked onto it. So whenever you attack, it actually does stuff, and it does more than just be a 1/3 body. Another good example is the Avarosa and Hearthguard. It is a 5-mana 5/5, but it has an ability that gives all units in your deck +1/+1 for the rest of the game. That is not vanilla. However, a 5-mana 5/5 with no ability is going to be considered vanilla. So these are all of the jargon words that I'm going to be going over today. That was all of the gameplay keywords. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did like this Thinking Like a Pro series, or if you have any other jargon words, make sure to leave them down in the comments below so other people can check them out in case I missed anything. So thank you all. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Let me know if you want more Thinking Like a Pro series. That's going to be it. Make sure to follow me over on Twitch because I stream over there almost every single day. Join my Discord so you get notifications and everything. That's it for this video. I hope you guys have a good day. I'll see you in the next one.